a body ravaged by disease, a stench so foul it drove courtiers to gag, a death so drawn out and grotesque it was whispered about in corridors, but scrubbed from the official story. This is the final chapter in the life of Henry. Tudor, better known to the world as Henry VIII, the king who once defied the Pope, shattered the Catholic Church in England, and ruled his realm with the certainty of divine right. I'm your host, Cloaked Testament, and this is The Time-Worn Record, where we deep dive into the most mysterious corners of history, unveiling the truths or myths that have been hidden or forgotten. What could possibly be hidden behind the curtain today? He had bent the laws of religion to his will. He had replaced queens as easily as a courtier might change robes. He had executed friends, wives, and enemies with the swing of a sword. Yet for all the power he wielded, in the end, he could not command his own body. Henry was born on June 28, 1491, not as the heir to the throne, but as the second son. His older brother Arthur was meant to inherit the crown, but Arthur's sudden death left the young Henry unexpectedly in line for the monarchy. When his father died in 1509, the 17-year-old Henry became king. And in those early years, he dazzled the courts of Europe. He was tall over 6 feet with broad shoulders and reddish gold hair that glimmered in the light. Ambassadors spoke of his athleticism, his charm, his musical talent, his command of languages. He jousted, danced, hunted, composed poetry, and played the lute. He was every inch the Renaissance prince. But behind the pageantry, Henry had a volatile temper and a will that brooked no opposition. Those traits would only intensify with time, and they would play a role in the nightmare of his final years. The turning point came on January 24, 1536. At a jousting tournament in Greenwich, Henry's horse tripped mid-charge and crashed down upon him. The king was knocked unconscious for hours. Many feared the worst, that England's ruler would die in the mud of the tilt yard. He survived, but he would never be the same. The accident reopened an old wound on his left leg. It quickly turned into a deep ulcer that refused to heal. It festered, oozed, and emitted a stench, so overpowering that courtiers claimed they could smell the king before they saw him. Some fainted in his presence. Doctors of the day had no understanding of germ theory. They lanced the wound to let it drain. They applied poultices of vinegar, herbs, even arsenic, believing it might draw out the poison. They cauterized it with red-hot irons, searing the flesh in an agony few could endure. Nothing worked. The ulcer worsened. Infection crept deeper. His legs swelled and darkened. At times, bone was visible beneath the rotting tissue. As his mobility faded, so too did his once trim figure. Unable to ride or hunt, Henry grew dangerously obese. His waist expanded to over 54 inches. His weight is estimated to have surpassed 180 kilograms. Palaces were modified with ramps and wider doorways to accommodate his bulk. He was moved between rooms with hoists and specially reinforced chairs. But it wasn't just his body that suffered. The accident, some historians believe, may have caused brain damage. After 1536, Henry became more paranoid, more erratic, more merciless. That same year, he ordered the execution of his second wife, Anne Boleyn, on charges of adultery, incest, and treason charges that many believe were fabricated. The king's court became a dangerous place. Trusted advisors were sent to the scaffold without warning. Friends disappeared overnight. Those who had once enjoyed his favor now lived in constant fear. Meanwhile, the ulcer in his leg refused to heal. Physicians grew desperate. They used leeches to balance the humors. They packed the wound with gold, leaf, and mercury, thinking these might purge the rot. Servants were tasked with cleaning and redressing the sores each day. The job was so foul that some begged to be reassigned, rather than endure the smell and sight. The pain was constant, yet Henry sought solace in excess. His appetite became legendary. He consumed enormous quantities of roasted meats, pies, and sugared wine. His daily intake may have reached 4,000 to 5,000 calories, almost entirely meat and starch, with scarcely a vegetable in sight. This diet, combined with his inactivity, worsened his health. Constipation plagued him. He suffered from kidney stones, gout, and perhaps type 2 diabetes. Still, he married again twice. His fifth wife, Catherine Howard, was a teenager when they wed. She could not bear his smell or his failing body, and she took a lover. When the affair was discovered, Henry had them both executed. His sixth and final wife, Catherine Parr, became more of a nurse than a queen. She managed his medications, oversaw his meals, and attempted to temper his rages. By the mid-1540s, Henry's condition was deteriorating rapidly. His teeth were blackened. His breath was so offensive that foreign dignitaries discreetly pressed scented cloths to their noses when speaking with him. His legs oozed constantly. He could barely stand without support. Yet to predict the king's death aloud was treason, so his doctors lied. His courtiers smiled and bowed. All the while, infection consumed him. He became obsessed with the idea of being poisoned. Every dish was tasted before it reached him. Utensils were polished and sealed. He trusted no one. As his mind slipped further into suspicion, even loyal nobles found themselves under the axe. Days before his death, he ordered the execution of Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey, a man once favoured in his inner circle. By January 1547, Henry was bedridden, feverish, and often delirious. Gangrene had set in. The once mighty king was wasting away. On the 27th of January, he allowed Archbishop Thomas Cranmer to be called to his side. Unable to speak, he squeezed the Archbishop's hand in affirmation of his faith. It was his final gesture. In the early hours of January 28th, he died. He was 55 years old. Even in death, there was no dignity. His body was too large for the coffin prepared. The embalming was rushed and crude. Internal organs were removed and replaced with aromatic herbs. But decomposition had already begun. The corpse swelled and leaked. During a vigil at St. George's Chapel, fluid seeped from the coffin onto the floor. Chroniclers wrote that stray dogs entered and lapped at the royal remains a sight. Some interpreted as divine justice. His funeral was delayed for weeks before he was finally laid to rest beside Jane Seymour, the only wife to bear him a son. That son, Edward VI, would die at just 15. Henry's quest for a lasting male legacy had ended in failure. The throne passed to his daughters Mary, who sought to restore Catholicism with fire and blood, and Elizabeth, the daughter of the wife he had executed, who became one of England's most celebrated monarchs. Henry's life remains a paradox. He was a visionary ruler who reshaped his nation's religion and government. He was also a tyrant who destroyed lives on a whim. He was a man of art and poetry, yet a man who gorged himself into ruin. His death was slow, humiliating, and without grandeur, a warning that even the most powerful cannot escape the decay of flesh. In the end, the image of Henry VIII is not of the golden youth who dazzled Europe, but of a bloated man writhing in pain, surrounded by servants too afraid to speak. His legacy was trapped in a rotting frame. Power could not preserve him. Legacy could not save him. And history will never forget the way he died.